Welcome to our Lecture 10, Legal and Ethical Issue. And again, to just ask you something that's very interesting, and I'm sure that you've been watching advertising, whether on TV, on the newspaper, a lot of time. But you never thought about if advertising is molding or is it reflecting the values of our culture. And again, remember which values, and of course it will always remember it's the prevailing values of our culture. It's the culture that made this nation what it is. So from now on, I think after this lecture, I'm pretty sure that you're going to see advertising in a whole different manners, because it does mold. And also it does reflect, and I guess it does both in a way without even us realizing about it. And of course then which value do we value? And of course you know that we value success, we value youth, we value having comforts, we value a quality of life, and this is where you're going to see more and more. And again, remember the purpose of business. Business is supposed to be making society better without harming us. So these are the advertising and the values that you see how advertising is molding us and also reflecting us. To make society better, you're going to see more and more advertising telling us like we deserve it, we need it, it's good for us. So that's very interesting. But before we go into that, I'd like to give you a picture about the law. And of course, to this day, the Constitution is the primary source of law. And the First Amendment of the Constitution is the freedom of speech. And one of the most important things that I want you to know is that we do have freedom of speech, but we do not have freedom of conduct. And this is my first lesson. For example, if we burn the flag of the United States, and once in a while, maybe every 5 years, every 6 years, every 7 years, every 10 years, that could be a symbol of freedom of speech or freedom of expression. We want to tell our government that we're not pleased with some of the stuff that they're doing. However, if the burning of the flag, which is offensive speech, but if that comes more often, you know, if we're going to start making it once a year or every 6 months, you're going to see that then that becomes conduct. And there's going to be an amendment in the Constitution about a crime, burning our flag of the United States. This is very interesting that I want you to think about it. So we do have freedom of speech, but we do not have freedom of conduct. And many times, the way you speak, this is the way you behave. So be very careful, because you can say a lot of things, but not necessarily act upon those things that you say. When speech is a marketplace of ideas, when we have the freedom to express our creativity, then it's fully protected by the Constitution. It is an absolute right against government. However, it's not an absolute right against the rights of society at large. I am not free to, you know, call somebody, hey, fat lady, how you doing? I am not free to do things like that against another entity. However, I have freedom of speech, freedom of expressing my idea against the government. That is very important as a right under the Constitution. Then we have limited protected speech, in certain types of speech that have limited protection under the First Amendment. And the government cannot forbid this type of speech, but it can subject to the speech to time, place, manner restriction. Because again, that is a right under the Constitution. So there are some speech that is limited, does not have full protection of our say whatever we want to. One of them is the offensive speech, may be restricted by the government if the speech offends many members of society or the reasonable people. Offensive speech. There are some towns in New Jersey that you cannot say certain word, you might be arrested. How they follow up this, I guess somebody has to take you to the municipal court and file a complaint that you said a word that was offensive in the town while you were walking on the sidewalk. But these things do happen. We do have cases like that. For example, the Federal Communication Commission, which is an agency appointed by the executive branch branch, listen to this, a branch can regulate the use of offensive language on television by limiting such language to time periods when children would be unlikely to be watching. And the latest example that we had is the Super Bowl, where there was a scene that since Super Bowl apparently now is becoming a family event, that was violating, that was something that the FCC has to stop, and now they're investigating a lot of these TV shows. And of course the opinion is, should the FCC monitor these things, or should the broadcaster have the discretion to do what is offensive, what isn't. Commercial speech also is limited. That means government or the FCC or the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has the power or the authority to remove certain commercial speech. And of course, you have to know the time, the place, and the manner. And one of the reasons is because commercial speech is misrepresenting people at large, society at large. And that's why we have the FTC, very, very important. So for example, in 2001, the South Carolina Supreme Court recently held that a state statute banning ads for video gambling violated the First Amendment because the statute did not directly advance a substantial government interest. So here is the state, which the state has the police power to protect their taxpayer, their citizen. And they wanted to stop certain ads about video gambling because gambling really, the notion of gambling is illegal unless the state allows the gambling. In this situation, they wanted not to advertise the video gambling. Although the court acknowledged that the state has a substantial interest in minimizing gambling, there was no evidence that a reduction in video gambling ads would result in a reduction in gambling. And this is the legal reasoning that the court gives, where the state cannot do that limit. Unprotected speech is speech that harms the good reputation of another, or defamatory speech. So speech that it's offensive or defames somebody's reputation, it's definitely unprotected. And that is what I was trying to explain at the beginning of the lecture, is that yes, we have a right to freedom of speech, but when it comes against another individual or against the rights of another society, or it's offensive to the reasonable people, then that is something that is not protected. I'm not allowed to say. Speech that violates criminal laws, such as threatening speech, including fighting words or words that are likely to incite others to respond violently, definitely it's unprotected. Obscene speech, which is quite subjective, is also very much unprotected. And of course, what is obscene? In 1973, one Supreme Court justice stated, "I know it being obscene when he sees it as obscene." So again, it's very subjective, and usually it's the community that decided. And there are cases that even defines there are three prongs that defines if a situation is obscene or not. Now remember that today, within our global economy, what's obscene in our society or in our nation might not be obscene in other countries. Very, very interesting. So, and I know that from a personal experience because I was raised in Europe, and I know that in Europe certain things are not obscene. Like in Europe, they love to take pictures of their children naked. And to this day, my mom still has a picture of me naked. And something like this we don't do in this country. It's just a different way of defining what is obscene. Obscene speech is speech that appeals to the prurient interest, depicts sexual conduct in a patently offensive way, and again, what's offensive, and lack serious, literally artistic, political, or scientific values. And over again, we have photographs or photographers that likes to take photographs of naked people in New York City, for example, and he continues to do that. And he gets arrested, and then he has to show that he's taking those pictures because he's a photographer and he wants to, it's an art that he's doing it, and then he's released from jail. All the time he does that, and it's very, very interesting because that's the first thing that's going to happen to him, and he will be arrested. Again, according to the First Amendment, I'm going to give you an example of a case whether a government agency decision to prohibit the inclusion of a certain illustration on beer labels unconstitutionally restricted commercial speech. So here is a situation where a state, under their police power, wanted to stop certain advertisement because they thought that it should not be advertised. The state did that, and of course it went all the way to the Supreme Court. The case is Bedford Brewery, excuse me, versus New York State Liquor Authority, 1998. The Bedford Brewery Inc. sells alcoholic beverage with labels that display a frog making a gesture known as giving the finger. This is the little frog. This is a label picture, and this is what it looks like. Bedford distributor Renaissance Beer Company applied to the New York State Liquor Authority for label approval. That shows you how we have state laws, we have local laws, and then we have the agency that you have to comply with their laws. And before the beer could be sold in New York, the NYSLA denied the application because, in part, children might see the labels in grocery and convenience stores, and they might think that that behavior is acceptable. So Bedford filed a suit in a federal district court against the New York State Liquor Authority, asking for, among other things, an injunction against this denial. They wanted to stop this because they wanted to have the freedom to advertise the label the way it was. And of course, the lower court, which is the federal district court, granted a summary judgment in favor. Now remember, the lower court usually have a tendency to make decision that is affecting the society within the consequences within their community. The appellate court decides more from what is good for the society at large, like the whole United States. And the Supreme Court usually make decision that protects our right as an individual. So here is the lower court is in favor of the New York State Liquor Authority. And of course the company Bedford appealed. And then the appellate court, the United States Court of Appeals of the second. So this the appellate court, they start seeing a bigger picture, a bigger view, not only for the good of society of New York State, but the United States. And they, the New York State Liquor Authority's ban on the use of the labels lacked a reasonable fit with the state interest in shielding minors from vulgarity. And the New York State Liquor Authority did not adequately consider alternatives to the ban. Over and over again, and this is the view of the court, which I like to share with you, but one of the things that's very interesting, whenever there is a problem or a dispute that's going to, or a conflict that's going to come within your business or personal, is there alternatives that are less injurious, that causes less harm to the person? Because if the alternatives are cheaper than the injuries, then you will be liable and you will be responsible to make sure that the alternatives are used or applicable. So according to the court, they say, in view of the wide currency of vulgar displays throughout contemporary society, including comic books targeted directly at children, bearing such a display from a label for alcoholic beverages cannot realistically be expected to reduce children's exposure to such a display to any significant degree. So the court says really by stopping the label, it's not going to stop the already vulgar conversation or communication that we have directly to children through videos and movies and comic book. So according to the court, there was numerous less intrusive alternatives that the state should first look into it before they stop a label from going into commerce. Now I'd like you to read the Hornell Brewing Company case in your textbook, taking in consideration the ethics that they were argued by the court. And this is a very interesting case too that's in your books, because Hornell decided to choose the name Crazy Horse for one of these products, which is a malt liquor. In this case, the federal court banned the label as a possible violation of commercial freedom. So in this situation, it was all the name. The other one was a picture of a frog that looks like it shows the finger. Why do you think that Hornell chose the name Crazy Horse for its malt liquor? Did they aim to appeal to the Native Americans the way the slender, pretty woman in Virginia Slim aimed to appeal to young females? Because again, keep in mind, does advertisement mold or reflects our values? And if you remember, the Virginia Slim did appeal to the young female. So think, what was the purpose of Crazy Horse on that picture? Or was it a vaguer notion that the chief face would work as one of several like Western icons, that the way Marlboro Man and his Marlboro country has so successfully sold cigarettes anywhere at all? Compare the situation here. If it was narrowly targeted, what is wrong with that? If they really wanted to target only to the Native American, what was wrong with that? From an ethical perspective, why can't a company target the advertisement of this legal product as cleverly as possible, where they know that there is a need, and try to attract only certain people of that need? Should it be Arnold's business that a high proportion of Native American alcoholics and that a high proportion of Native American babies are born with fetal alcohol syndrome? Is there something that they should be looking into it before they advertise, so that then they don't want to advertise it because they don't want it, encourage people to continue that trend of behavior? Does advertising products and services negatively affect people like tobacco, alcohol, and gambling? Or is it positive? You know, what does it do? Should law protect speech that offend a minority group? Should law protect speech that offend a minority? And you know that very often we use the term political correctness, and we have to be careful. I remember for a time where I first came to this country, this is the 60s, I mean, I had more people, more friends meeting me and always have an Italian joke to share with me, until one day, and I think maybe that's why the person stopped. I remember, you know, having and I was just getting tired of hearing Italian jokes, because sometimes they were stupid, sometimes I didn't think was funny, and maybe it could be because of the mood that I was too. And I remember this person giving me this Italian joke, and then I came back and I said, you know, do you speak Italian? And he says, no. And I says, do you write Italian? And he says, no. I said, do you read Italian? And he goes, no, of course not. I said, well, how does it feel to be dumber than Italian? Well, he almost fell off the chair. And he never gave me any Italian jokes. But there was a reason why people had Polish joke, Italian jokes. You know what I'm saying? And that is because in 1920s, 1930s, we had so many immigrants coming that did not know how to speak English. And they probably didn't even know how to write their own language either. And that's why they were coming here, to be free, to work, to get an education, because in other countries you were born into a class and you were not entitled, you were not getting education. So this is where all those jokes sounds, because it sounds like you are not too bright when you don't understand when people are talking to you. They can hear you, but they just don't understand the language. And that's why here today, I'd like you to let me know, should the law protect speech that offends a minority group? Are we becoming oversensitive to something like that? Is the notion of freedom of speech from the early concept of a marketplace of ideas similar to commercial speech? Or is there any difference? I mean, isn't commercial speech a freedom to express how to sell the product and to attract most people so that we're going to sell more product? Isn't that a market of ideas, how to sell more or make society better without harming it? So these are the things that, and is there a difference? And of course, according to the Federal Trade Commission, there is a big difference, because the advertisement is not telling us the whole truth. It's misrepresenting us, and it might tell us that in a couple of days you're going to look gorgeous, or your wrinkles will go away, when in reality that is not necessarily correct, and there are people that gets hurt. So I would like to hear your opinion. Of course, now as a discussion, compare and distinguish the ethics that was argued in both the Hornell and the Bedford cases. what kind of ethical perspective was they used? You know, now remember who was the party too, who was bringing the case, was it the state that was bringing the case, or was it a private company? Because you know that if the state is bringing the case, or the plaintiff, then the standard of proof will be a lot more stricter because it's the government. Where it's a private company, then there's a little bit of a difference there. So I really would like to hear your opinion and see from what ethical perspective the judges in both cases, and the good and the bad in this situation. Thank you.